there, though. A ton of Roto-World headlines to get through. Kind of a weird year in the NFL calendar as it is schedule release week, but a lot of transactional moves going on as well. But let's start elsewhere as ESPN's Elena Getzenberg believes, and this is something we talked about when he was drafted. Yeah. She believes the Bills will use tight end Dalton Kincaid, their first-round pick, more like a wide receiver this season. As soon as he got drafted, I feel like the reaction from this desk was, well, this is their new slot receiver.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like, they're just reporting what we've already said.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you. Like, kudos to us. Like, I'm patting myself on the back.
Yes.
No, but on all seriousness, we said this on draft night when we talked about it. We talked about this, Connor, that you felt like Dalton Kincaid had the best hands in the draft. That this was a guy, he's not a blocking tight end.
Not at all, no.
Right. So we talked about his ability to catch the ball. No tight end had more receptions last year than Dalton Kincaid. And you think about the Buffalo Bills, where, they got the ghost of Cole Beasley off his couch last year because they were so desperate for slot production, right? I mean, they lost Jamison Crowder in the preseason. Last year, only 7 teams in the NFL had more targets to the slot than the Buffalo Bills. They were 8th in slot targets, and now 78 slot targets are available. As you see sort of the names there on your screen. So I think Kincaid suddenly becomes really interesting because he qualifies at tight end. He's going to a high-octane offense that likes to pass to the slot. I think I don't know that he's right there as a top 10, but like if you draft a second tight end, like all of a sudden he becomes really interesting and he sort of vaults to the top of tight end premium dynasty leagues.
Yeah, and I think as well that they just need to diversify their offense outside of Stephon Diggs too. I think we saw last season, particularly in the games against me and Connor's Jets, when Sauce Gardner was on Stephon Diggs and Diggs just got taken out, particularly in the second game. The Bills just didn't really have anything else to do because Gabe Davis was banged up, and so now they get another option, and he should be used if he's good enough.
Right. You think about Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, especially a healthy Gabe Davis. Remember, we talked about the fact that he had that high ankle sprain for much of last year that limited his production. So another year of Gabe Davis, now hopefully fully healthy. Stephon Diggs on the outside. You got Shakir in the slot as well. James Cook should have a bigger role. He's a nice pass-catching running back. And Dalton Kincaid. And all of a sudden, hey, what do you know? The Bills' offense is going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Hashtag analysis.
Josh Allen allegedly not going to run as much. Like, we'll see if that happens. But
I don't believe.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. That I don't
When
believe.
it hits the fan, Josh Allen's going to run. Yeah. One more transactional move here for the Bills. They signed Latavius Murray to a 1-year contract. This backfield's suddenly very crowded. You have James Cook, who was a second-round pick 2 years ago. They also signed Damian Harris much earlier in the offseason. They traded for Naheem Hines last year. Now they signed Latavius Murray.
So many guys.
It's a lot of guys, but this feels like the depth move that probably concerns you the least, I would think.
It's a depth move. To me, it's more of a concern for Damian Harris. I don't know that both those guys make this team. I can't see Damian Harris and Latavius Murray playing special teams. You've got James Cook, and I feel like contractually they're sort of stuck with Hines. Like, I mean, I feel like he weirdly makes more money than you think he does. Like, I remember we showed a graphic earlier, and it was like
a top 10 paid running
back.
Right,
like he's making like $6 million a year, and I just don't know if they can get out of that. And so,
and he does play special teams,
right?
So that helps too.
Right.
Hines plays special teams. Why the rest of the guys don't?
So So it just feels like with those 4 guys, like one of them is likely not making the team. Maybe. I mean, we'll see if this is depth, but again, feels like forgetting everything else. Just from a pure talent standpoint, James Cook is a step above all these guys. Like, I don't think it's particularly close. And so it does mean that maybe there's less touchdown equity for Cook because whether Harris or Murray are both really good around the goal line. But so it's more of a concern to me about James Cook's fantasy value than it is suddenly Latavius Murray is interesting.
Yeah, and I think with the Buffalo backfield, like all you want from a fantasy perspective is clarity for James Cook. That's the only thing that matters because you're not gonna get excited about Damian Harris or if Latavius Murray has a good game or Naeem Hines has a big game catching the ball. Like all you want is a clear lane for James Cook to the maximum usage, and this just clogs that further.
If he can get Devin Singletary's role from last year down the stretch where they use Singletary significantly, then it becomes interesting. So this is a story to watch, but I think this is actually, of all the potential landing spots for Murray, I actually think this is the worst because it is so crowded.
Another interesting running back room in the AFC. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor said Travion Williams could have a role in the team's backfield. When you look at this one, a little different from the Bills, we know there's Joe Mixon at the top. Everybody's looking at June 1st because after June 1st, they can save a lot of money on Joe Mixon's deal if they want to move on from him. After that, they drafted Chase Brown this year, really good athlete out of Illinois. Travion Williams, who obviously Zach Taylor is apparently high on, and Chris Evans here to round out this group where with Samaje Perine out the door here, Jay, there might be some opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Travion Williams clearly has talent and just the opportunity just for touchdowns. And this is the Bengals have the ultimate 3-point shooting offense with a space floor for you to drive, basically. And so there's going to be huge equity and potential for any running back who seizes the role. And it just doesn't seem like Joe Mixon's going to be there.
I felt the same way. A lot of their quotes have been very odd about him in the offseason. He's on the team situation when you look at when the money can be freed up. So we'll wait and see on that one, but undoubtedly, whether it's Chase Brown or Travion Williams, somebody behind him is going to be able to carve out a role.
Yep.
Yeah, look, and this is a guy that I liked quite a bit coming out of Texas A&M.
One of your Aggies.
One of my Aggies as well. It's interesting because I remember being at the Combine a couple of years ago, and because I have Travion Williams in one of my dynasty leagues, and because he's a Texas A&M guy, I was just like, hey, what do you think about Travion Williams? I was talking to the Bengals running back coach at the time. He's no longer on the team. The coaches, he's moved on. And he said, we love Travion Williams. This kid is so good in practice. And for whatever reason, maybe it's because he got beat out by Samaje Perine, and then they drafted Evans. And just for whatever reason, Travion Williams has not been able to sort of crack the lineup, which is a little concerning because Zach Taylor's been there the whole time, and now he's talking him up. And he's like, well, yeah, I've had the dude for 3 or 4 years. Having said that, sure, there's an easy scenario to see a significant amount of playing time for Travion Williams. Now, if they let go of Joe Mixon, do they go in and sign a veteran? Ezekiel Elliott is still out there. Leonard Fournette is still out there. But the fact of the matter is there is one. To your point, in fantasy, we hope for clarity. We look for, fantasy success comes from opportunity and talent. I still believe Travion Williams has talent, and the Bengals are saying all the right things in the offseason. So is there opportunity? And given the June 1st potential cap casualty of Joe Mixon, there is a path to playing time. And even if Mixon comes back, that Samaje Perine role is still available.
I mean, it's kind of, maybe we haven't talked about it enough. It's one of the most random situations in the NFL from a fantasy perspective, and that the Bengals running back, the Bengals might have the best offense in football. That's on the cards, and they don't really have a running back necessarily at the moment. It's Joe Mixon by default, but Travion Williams could just slide in there, or just a random guy could slide in there and be a top 10 running back next year.
Another A&M running back in the news, Devon Achane, taken by the Miami Dolphins. ESPN's Marcel Louis-Jacques wrote that Mike McDaniel lobbied heavily. That doesn't surprise anybody. What does Mike McDaniel want for his offense? Speed. What did Achane bring in this draft at the position? Some of the best speed at the running back spot. So for Miami, it's going to be interesting. Raheem Mostert's back, Jeff Wilson's back, but when those guys get hurt, or even if they don't, it feels like they'll scheme up some touches for Achane.
I love this landing spot for him dynasty-wise, and I think he's a great late-round flyer in redraft leagues this year. He's going to be third on the depth chart on what should still be a pass-first offense behind Mostert and Wilson. But to your point, both those guys have had significant injury issues over the last couple of years, and so the fact that McDaniel lobbied hard for Achane, he's a great fit for Miami. We talked about this draft night. I was thrilled with this landing spot for him. He's a kid that I root for, again, as a Texas A&M Aggie fan, as a guy that grew up in College Station. I like my Aggies, gig 'em. And Achane, I've watched a lot of his film over the years, and, kid can play.
Yeah, and who else has got injury concerns is Tua Tagovailoa. So I wonder if they're going to run the ball a bit more this coming season, particularly now they've got 3 weapons. Jeff Wilson was really good when he got there, and Raheem Mostert had some incredible games. Think back to the late season game against Buffalo in particular. He was just running all over them.
Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the show. And so Achane is certainly going to have a role. What's his ceiling this season, Connor? Can he be really fantasy relevant if he gets the opportunity?
I think he can because he can hit the big play. That's the big thing with Achane. And if McDaniel's offense finds ways to get quick touches to the speed guys, and if you could do that with Achane, they used him honestly in college, as you know, in between the tackles a lot for a smaller running back. Maybe in the Miami offense, there's a little bit more open opportunities for him on screens, swing passes. So listen, when those guys get banged up, yeah, he's extremely relevant right away because of that big play element. And you bring up your point, Jay, about them running the ball a little bit more. Mike McDaniel really made his roots on being the run game coordinator under Kyle Shanahan for the Niners. So there
might be very Shanahan thing to do, take a running back in the 3rd round like this. I mean, who's his comp? Who's he most like in the league, would you say, Achane?
I had a throwback comp on him, Javid Best, who had a career-ending injury situation, but when he played, he was explosive. I thought he was the same exact player, similar size, similar skill set. So a little bit of a throwback with Achane.
Cool. Like it.
All right, another one here, guys. Looking at the Bears, the Athletics' Adam Johns believes the Bears don't want a bell cow running back in the offense this season. Obviously, another crowded situation. They drafted Roschon Johnson this year, which a lot of people are very high on. They signed Deontay Foreman. They have Khalil Herbert back again. Travis Homer is a part of this backfield. And here's the thing, Barry. We know how much Justin Fields commands touches in the running game as well.
They don't want a bell cow running back, but the situation may be solved for them. The fact of the matter is that they may have to pick one, and they're going to be pretty run heavy. Like, again, they added DJ Moore, which is great, but this should still be a run heavy team. This should still be, it's Chicago, it's cold weather, it's like all the cliches, right? I mean, they improved the offensive line, which is big, and because of Fields' athleticism and his ability to run, that opens up things for the rest of the run game, because you always have to keep a linebacker to spy on Fields. Otherwise, he's going to kill you. So I do think there's a scenario where, and again, there's 4 solid running backs there, but I do feel like there'll be some value from Foreman and Herbert. You know what I mean? Like, and if one of those guys kind of pops, like, they're not going to keep him off the field. They're not going to be like, hey, sorry, I know Khalil Herbert, I know you're doing awesome, but too bad, we've got to get some touches for Foreman or Roschon Johnson. They're not going to do that. They're going to play the best players.
Yeah. I read this as good news for Roschon Johnson. The fact that there's no one established between Foreman and Herbert. They're not getting behind, Herbert's going to be the guy this year, like we thought he might have been last season. I mean, Roschon Johnson, Connor, is he someone who could step in and, be a 240 carry guy this season?
Easily. I mean, this was Bijan Robinson's backup. Any other program in the country, he's the starter. He has talent. Here's the thing with Roschon Johnson. He comes in ready in pass pro, so coaches will trust to get him on the field. He's got soft hands. He's a tough downhill runner. I think they get into camp and look at him and go, maybe this guy's our best running back right now. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And to enhance your point, Barry, about them being a run team, they took a run-blocking, heavy right tackle with the 10th overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, that guy's a mauler. And the fact is that there may all these guys, I think Foreman, Herbert, and Johnson are all viable late-round flyers, right? Especially if you're doing best ball drafts right now. Like, they're all viable late-round flyers here. We've seen all these guys. We've seen Foreman have a lot of success. We've seen Herbert, when he got the run, when Montgomery was out, we've seen him have a lot of success in the NFL. And obviously, expectations are high for Johnson in this role. So, yeah, it's one of those things that we'll wait to see. I do feel like at some point somebody will emerge.
Yep.
There's 3 good guys there.
Roschon Johnson, 35-1, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Wouldn't probably bet that now, but something to pay attention to out of camp if he kind of emerges as the guy.
I mean, at those odds, those are Hail Mary odds, and he's somebody that truly has the build to be a.
But I agree with you. He's got talented running backs before him, but there's no one that they've sort of planted their flag in, and so I think it will be sort of best guy, and we'll see if it's a bit of a committee. But I do think Chicago's going to be run heavy enough and a good enough offense that there will be some flex value in multiple running backs with the Bears.
More rookie news here. Our very own Peter King believes a slow start by the Titans could result in Will Levis starting for the team by November. Ryan Tannehill on an expiring contract. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill dealt with the ankle last year. But I'll say this. 1, I don't think Will Levis is even close to being ready to play.
Right.
Yeah.
2, Ryan Tannehill's not bad when healthy.
I don't understand why people don't like Ryan Tannehill.
I don't get it either.
Ryan Tannehill's like the 15th best quarterback in the league or something.
And
like,
sometimes
he's
better,
fine.
honestly.
He took them to a 1 seed when Derrick Henry missed half the season. Like, Ryan Tannehill is good. I just don't understand why they don't like him.
Other than A.J. Brown, name one viable wide receiver he's ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, other than A.J. Brown, like he's just been out there with a bunch of like also-rans.
Russell Westbrook, Keno.
Right, I mean, right, exactly. I mean, honestly.
Speaks volumes.
I mean, no, seriously, the ghost of Robert Wood last year. I mean, they just, so, yeah, I don't get that. I look, Peter's as plugged in as any person in the NFL that's been covering. So I don't doubt that there's some truth to this. Like there's some smoke to that fire, but it does seem like that would be it would have to be a complete catastrophe. And when you think about the AFC South, like we think the Colts will be better, we're expecting good things out of the Jaguars, but there's not a team where you feel like, well, they're running away with that division.
No.
The Titans play good enough defense and they run the ball well enough that they're going to be in most, and Mike Vrabel's a good enough coach. It's hard to see a scenario where it's November and they're 2-7. It's just hard to see that scenario.
I think they've pretty clearly got the best defense in the division and the second best quarterback in the division when you think you're not going to expect much out of Indy and Houston quarterbacks this season. So also, there's like Malik Willis, does he exist still? Is it just a complete write-off? Like, why is he still on the team?
To them, it feels like he doesn't.
Yes. I mean, honestly, like that, to me, that's much more of like dirt on the water of Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Or dirt on the grave, I guess. I don't know.
on
Water on the flower. I don't know. I mix
Oh,
metaphors.
boy. Yeah, the
I'm,
juleps.
I had 26 of them.
The over did hit, Jay.
The over
Let's
did
not
hit.
forget.
Whatever.
So
it just
free,
feels like
apparently. Maybe.
The fact is that it just with Malik Willis, understand that it's a new regime, right? It's a brand new general manager, and it does feel like them trading up into the second round to go get Will Levis is kind of like a way for them to say, like, we're waving the white flag on Malik Willis. We just don't think he's ever going to get there. To me, that's what this report is that it's not like, hey, if things are going south and we have to totally tear it down and rebuild, it'll be Willis or Levis. The report is it's going to be Levis.
What's your rate on Malik Willis? Did you like him coming out of the draft? What did you see from him last season?
I didn't think he was a first-round caliber quarterback, but I liked enough tools where you take him and develop him. I think for the Titans, there's a situation where he could have been thrusted into playing, and he's not ready to play.
Yeah.
And he's a smaller quarterback that was an older prospect, but electric runner with a big arm, and you see what happens with guys like that. And for the Titans, they don't really seem interested in seeing what happens with a guy like that.
I mean, it is worth noting that like they were in a playoff. They needed to beat the Jaguars to make the playoffs, and they decided to sign Josh Jobs, who they signed off a practice squad 3 weeks earlier to start that game than Malik Willis, who'd been in camp and been in the building the entire year.
Listen, Malik Willis did a great job handing the ball off to Derrick Henry against the Texans for 220 yards. Great job.
This is factually correct.
ESPN's David Newton writes, the goal is to get Miles Sanders back to where he was as a rookie in 2019 when he caught 50 passes. Barry, obviously a lot of opportunity for Miles Sanders now on the Panthers. This feels a little lofty, no?
He's had under 30 receptions and under 200 receiving yards each of the past 3 seasons. He ranked last. This is incredible, guys. Last year, Miles Sanders ranked last among running backs in yards per reception and yards per target among running backs with at least 25 targets. Like, there wasn't one running back worse than Sanders in those categories in the NFL. And by the way, the other weird thing here is that, like, Chuba Hubbard's a nice pass-catching running back. Yeah. Now, and so he's a nice pass-catching running back. Now, I get it, because Carolina, like, they're sitting there like, well, if he doesn't throw the running back, who's he thrown to? You know, Adam Thielen, DJ Shark, like Jonathan Mingo. Like, there's not, it's not like a lot of guys that are going to command targets for the Panthers, but it just feels like you didn't draft Bryce Young to dump it off to the running back. This one feels like off-season, like sort of, like on my old show we used to do sort of like a, news or noise. Yeah. And this feels like noise.
Yeah. I'm already excited for your tweets, Matthew, about Raheem Blackshear vulturing touchdowns from Miles Sanders, because that's coming.
I throw my mid-julep against the wall. Very upset. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.